exactly how that works. So just like normal, you're going to get a ban on one side, followed by a ban on the other. We will then go back and forth, and so far, everything is just peachy. You start off with the first, you go into 2 on the opposite, and then we will finish out with 5 picks total. This is where things now get dicey, because after those 5th picks as they come in, this is where the enemy team can then start looking for a counter ban. This is the double ban system. Of course, we will have 2 on each side, and then we will resume the draft with a 2-2-1 to end up at the very end of it with 10 picks, at 4 bans, and a heck of a lot of counter strategy to be put into this tournament.
And we've already seen a pretty interesting impact of that in terms of some of the choices players and teams have made with, trying to deny the Abathur symbiotes for teams that have been going for those Zeratul strategies and, almost with the Illidan. But this now is going to be a pretty interesting match, as we're going to be having Tempo Storm playing against the PLEYZ, and I can get behind that name, the PLEYZ. Haven't heard of them before.
Well, there's a good reason for that, because a lot of these teammates, they're just gotten again together, but they do actually run a team in some of the lower brackets. So if you recognize some of these names because you've been playing online with Hero League or a lot of Quick Match, you will actually notice a few of these names if you watch some of the other tournaments out there.
Yes, they're, of course, very strong in the amateur series, looking to make that breakout performance. We have the PLEYZ roster right here. It is PyratRum, Zeus, Daihuu, LexUther, and Evandrinde.
Yeah, and PyratRum there, I believe, is actually the captain there at the top as well.
Man, it's interesting getting these guys coming up against what could be considered, a titan of an opposing team. 8 wins, 0 losses, making their way through here. What do you feel about these 2 popular choices, Tassadar and Jaina? We've seen a lot of both of those today.
Well, there's a reason that they're popular choices, because they do deliver so much in their respective. But look at that as well, Tomb of the Spider Queen. There is a lot of Tomb of the Spider Queen, which is not exactly how we kind of saw this when the map was released and competitive kind of got together and said this map is a little bit too confrontational. But we've been seeing it a heck of a lot.
Sure have, absolutely. And like you mentioned, that means we are going to, if we find ourselves on that map for this series, going to see quite a bit more aggressive compositions like you mentioned. But I think we can hop over and take a look at the roster card for Tempo Storm. And for playing for these guys, we do have a Dreadnaught, of course. Team captain Soldier is going to be on the team as well. Arthelon, Kaeyoh, and Zuna, the new Require, rounding out the roster.
Yeah, Tempo Storm has been one of the staple teams in the scene with great results, even against other top teams you've seen here, such as Cloud9 Maelstrom. And their picks, Tassadar popular with them, as well as Rhaegar. Two pretty big supports. No surprises here, Forecourt?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, Tassadar, Rhaegar, Dreadnaught absolutely adores Rhaegar when it comes to it, because there's just so much healing you can do with it. It's also a very different support style, and they incorporate that into their builds extremely well. And something that was mentioned there, Tempo Storm is the longest standing North American team.
Yeah, I mean, there's a team that you've been hearing about for quite
probably them.
Yeah, for quite a while. I mean, I coming into this, looking at the teams that you're competing, it's like, well, who among these teams haven't been, the most, the most active? And you're going to see a lot of the newer teams, but Cloud9 Maelstrom, Tempo Storm looking very strong, and I'm very interested to see where this goes, especially once we get into the draft.
So I believe that the draft will be here in just a few moments here, ladies and gentlemen. But Mr. Kubi, do you have any kind of predictions going into this?
Well, it's hard to count out Tempo Storm as the favorite for this. We talked about how they really are the longest running team for NA, really. But as of late, over the past couple weeks, they have been taking strong victories over some of the other really top-notch NA teams, such as Cloud9 Maelstrom. We talked about that in the interview with Dunk Train just now. But, of course, they're looking to hold that title and keep moving forward.
Yeah, and it does appear that the draft is ready for us to get into and see what picks, what vetoes we're going to have, and immediately starting off with the Sylvanas veto by the PLEYZ. Popular choice for Tempo Storm?
Well, Sylvanas just by herself is just a really good standalone hero. It's really hard to just kind of leave her to her own devices, because then you're going to find yourself minus a whole bunch of siege damage here and there. And especially on big maps like this, because we are going into Sky Temple, it's just too much distance. If she's way down bottom and you're fighting up top, well, that's probably a gone for it.
Following up with the Abathur veto, so we're denying the possibility of getting that symbiote in. this seems to be removing some of the specialists from play, Kubi.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I think this big deal, Tempo Storm has really found, especially against some other teams like Vortex, etc., they just don't want to deal with the Abathur. And it's not really a hero that they play all that much themselves. So just take away the possibility of the combination of what we see here with Zeratul. And they could have picked that up maybe later with Abathur. Cool to take it out. I think that just fits into their style.
Yeah, this is where it starts to get interesting, since these picks will also end up determining what the second vetoes could be that we end up seeing either team go for. Zeratul, of course, being a strong choice that's been pretty common so far in today's matches, and overall there we see that Tassadar from Tempo Storm. I don't think this comes as a surprise to any of us.
No, we've been seeing a lot of Tassadar to counter out the stealth, and again, Tempo Storm, they adore the Tassadar. They're likely to run a Rhaegar later on, and this kind of pick right here early on, it's going to be an Illidan. If there's not going to be a Rhaegar ban later from the PLEYZ, this could actually start looking extremely bad for them right off the bat.
So what are we thinking about possibly for second vetoes now coming up, as these guys are starting to, you see a little bit more of their strategies. We have 2 more picks left to be made for the PLEYZ, but they already have a strong composition to look at.
Yeah, so we're going to see that Jaina is picked up from the PLEYZ, so they're looking to really try to round out their damage composition, as they don't, have a whole lot. I mean, I guess Tempo Storm, they're trying to just make sure that they sort of steal out the rest of the damage possibility, and they're taking a very early Malfurion.
That is rather surprising. We have seen a lot of Malfurion here in these tournaments for the North American side. Typically, that's not really a lot of the case going into this one, but that early, I'm not entirely too sure we're going to see an Uther ban coming out from Tempo Storm, but we're likely not to see a Brightwing there either because of that pick.
Yeah, so the second veto ends up being Muradin. We're removing one of those warriors from possible pool, and I think you mentioned, since both teams have reasonable supports already, not as likely to see potentially that Uther, who's a good choice to go for the PLEYZ to veto.
Well, they don't really have something that's, there's too many options. There's Brightwing, there's Uther, and there's Rhaegar, so any of those could have been picked up. I think they're just looking to try to take out one of the cleanses, and they're just saying, well, we'll take the lesser of the 2 evils, we'll deal with Uther. It's probably going to be the pick, but you mentioned Rhaegar too, and that's sort of a preferential thing for Tempo Storm.
Yeah, I think Tempo Storm is actually going to be putting a Rhaegar there on the board. But, I mean, with an Uther, there's a lot of possibilities there. We have an Abathur ban, so you're not going to see a big combo there with the Illidan. But the Tassadar, Illidan, and then, X Healer is a really strong triple core here for Tempo Storm. All they got to do is add some big guns into the back line, and they're going to be just looking A-okay.
Yeah, the Asmodon choice coming into this. So
that's a big gun.
That's one of the bigger guns you're going to be seeing, with those globes flying around as the game progresses forward. And we've seen the power of those stacks in the previous games we've already had here today.
Yeah, so that means that they might pair that up with exactly that Johanna. She does have the very, very strong wave clear ability with that Knight takes pawn at level 1, so I think that's a very, very strong choice. We do still have the 2 remaining pickups from the PLEYZ, and they need to still look to grab a very, very strong warrior, perhaps some more damage. There's the Anubarak.
Now, curious, is this last pick actually going to be the Tyrael for the Dream Team? That does actually happen right there. Tyrael, Anubarak, Zeratul. There is a little bit of a concern right now that the PLEYZ has a few too many melees with the double warrior and the Zeratul. But it's also going to be a big onus on Malfurion to keep them all going.
Yeah, my biggest question for you guys is, Tempo Storm is going to round out with Rhaegar. They'll be able to have that big heal later on that you were mentioning. How does that counteract against playing against an Anubarak and a Tyrael at the same time?
Yeah, it's putting a lot of pressure onto Dreadnaught, of course. Playing that Rhaegar, he's going to have to make sure that those ancestral healings are very, very much on point. And he's known in the past to be able to be very precise with those, and I don't think this would be any exception.
I'm very excited to see how this turns out. An interesting sort of setup, more so I think from the red team, but we are just about ready to get into this game, so we can start it up and see who's going to take the first map in the series between the PLEYZ and Tempo Storm. As we are loaded in, we are ready to get this underway.
All right, so on the left-hand side, guys, will be the PLEYZ there in blue. We're currently looking at Tempo Storm there on the right-hand side. Soldier, Dreadnaught, Arthelon, Kaeyoh, and of course, Zuna. This is the #1 long-lasting team, the team with the most results, but you cannot underestimate these guys. The PLEYZ, you might not have heard of them, but if you look at some of those names, these guys have been in and around some of the more amateur tournaments, the next level down. They've been practicing, and now their results are paying off here into top 8.
And we already have, that start. Everybody's all close to the center, especially here, looking for any opportunities to make something happen on this battleground. What's the key to victory for either of these teams when they're looking to establish themselves?
Well, you see, early on, we're going to be sticking together here as 5 from the PLEYZ. They're looking to scout out what Tempo Storm is going to be doing. If they can get themselves the first blood, all the merrier. But it is not going to be so here, at least not yet from Tempo Storm. But as well, Tempo Storm, I don't think you're going to see a lot of aggression early. It's all about right now getting this Asmodee and those very important stacks early on.
Yeah, building up the stacks for that globe as they pick off the creep waves. Killing more is better than killing the high value targets, since as it goes on, you'll be able to eventually stack up, and as you guys mentioned earlier on, the world records, as it were, for getting up that fast stack of 500 plus.
Yeah, it's 11 minutes currently, but I'm not entirely too sure that we're going to be seeing that here. But this is the big synergy. Soldier goes in with that Johanna. The Knight takes pawn, they do big damage, and that wasn't quite exactly the clear Arthelon I was looking for, but it still adds valuable stacks to it. Now, what's going on in the other lanes? Zuna into the bottom. He's the lone Illidan on this, and lone Illidan this early on, especially against Nubarak, you're not likely to see a lot of action down there early.
Yeah, and it seems more like he's going to be ready to get himself set up for those big plays later on. But now we have the temples activating, and we've seen a reasonable amount of just teams splitting these, not forcing it too far early on. And, I mean, the impression that you guys have given me from everything that you've gone over is that it's kind of okay for that, but a bit of contesting going on in the center temple.
Well, I mean, we already have red up into the top, and now if you give red both, that just cannot stand. So the PLEYZ, they know that, and they will contest. They do have, of course, a little bit better of that early game with the double warrior, with that Jaina. They will be able to just kind of put up a bit more of a more offensive
You don't
front.
want to get up close and personal when they've got double warrior that
not
fast.
this early, my friend, not at all. And of course, remember, Arthelon, his main goal here is to wander around with Johanna. Now, they might be able to put up a little bit of poke damage here, but Malfurion, he knows how to handle all this easily. And Dread, I mean, into that top lane, he has taken quite a few of those shots before PyratRum was able to put up a fight.
Yeah, I mean, not even able to finish getting all the charges out of that temple while the blue team manages to hold on to it in the center position for now. Rhaegar goes back up to get it. He's got Johanna there to back him up, as well as Asmodee, and Tyrael alone not really going to be able to make too much. Zeratul is there as well, but at this point it's more about just trying to defend that fort that's being slowly battered down by the temple.
All right, so level 4 talents are out for these guys. We're going to launch Kaeyoh here. Should be okay. It is a Tassadar. It is going to void out those roots. Something to point out here, though, is that Tempo Storm on the Tassadar, they do have Promote, and as well the General of Hell from Asmodee at level 4. That is also, more importantly, a global Promote. So we're going to see a lot of team fights. We're going to see a lot of clashes in one lanes, but you're going to see Promotes in the other, and that just really adds to the pressure that Tempo Storm can apply to the PLEYZ.
Yeah, the biggest power of that is being able to push the lanes forward without actually having to be present, and that can open up opportunities to go for some of these merc camps or step out of the lanes to try and help deny some of these.
So because the PLEYZ knows that it's a little bit more of a passive early game here from Tempo Storm, that's why they got aggressive, and they are going to be rewarded with it. Those Siege Giants have now, basically been stolen out from their opponents. So that's not something that they're going to be able to capitalize on later, Tempo Storm that is, and now they're also suffering a little bit siege damage. Kaeyoh has to take time out of his busy schedule to come down and deal with this. He's not where he wants to be. And you can see Asmodee and Johanna there in the mid, they are just continuing to get ping-pong back and forth between these lanes, covering for Tassadar because he's just not going to be out there soaking.
Yeah, I mean, aside from having to deal with those Siege Giants, everybody seems to be mostly well spread out, tries to come in and get a pull on the wave in the center position, but mostly everybody's getting a reasonable amount of EXP. Doesn't seem to be a big advantage for either team in terms of setup-wise getting those talents out faster than each other.
Yeah, so level 7s each side. As the level 7s come in, another big interesting talent here is, again, Tassadar, not only with Promote at 4, but now the Mule coming down. As a StarCraft player, you know all about mules.
Oh, yeah. Well, when your fort's burning down, a mule's a great way to keep it from reaching 0, that's
exactly
for
right.
sure. And on a map where, the objectives that you're fighting over are going to bring those forts and eventually those keeps down, I can see it being quite useful.
All right, so the second set of temples are going to be activated. It's only the one lone into the bottom. Neither side is going to be in danger of getting those heroics as of yet, but this is great timing. We just saw Zuna capture those bruiser camps solo into the top, and that is especially good timing because now everybody's going to be looking for a fight into the bottom, and if that's going to be prolonged or it doesn't work out for the PLEYZ, they're going to be suffering a lot of siege damage top, or at least they would if they didn't have their own bruisers up there.
Yeah, so the bruisers trading out as they fight over the southern temple in this position, and we can see those globes continue being chucked, clearing out those waves, buying some space. There we have the Johanna coming in with that pull, trying to get everybody nice and close, but push back. We have Tyrael still pushing away, and Illidan trying to get on top of right
back
in
line.
here. Yeah, the back line. It's making it very tricky for them, and doesn't seem like there's going to be too much actual trading going on. Just a lot of hit points, really trying to contest for positioning over this temple.
Yeah, now remember, it's double support here for Tempo Storm. They got shields, they got heals, and at the same time, we have the Malfurion on the side. We have a lot of sustain going from side to side, and nobody has heroics, but they are going to be collapsing big here. Zuna is really looking for that takedown on Drin, but it's going to be enough with that dunk there from Arthelon, so a little bit of that damage. Those stacks are now starting to pay off. He's over 100 in total so far at the 5-minute mark. Not too bad. 106 now to be exact, and that little bit of extra damage was what sealed the deal there for that first takedown.
Yeah, being able to knock down that Jaina really removes a lot of the control that you have over the enemy team with all of the slows from the chill there, and allows them to continue to push back, and now being forced to run away Zeratul back to the keep, but it does get picked off, and it looks like Illidan might be able to escape with his life after that after all.
Yep, a great heal coming out there from the Dread. The evasion paying off really big there for the Illidan, but Zuna will eventually go down. Just continued pressure from those double warriors, from those auto attacks, from the Malfurion, and by the end of it, it will just be kind of a 2-for-1 trade, but a lot of those shots went to Tempo Storm, and there is no mule on the side of the play, so every little bit of siege damage is going to be permanent.
Yeah, that's a really good point. During all of that fight, they were able to hold the temple and get the last bit of damage output from it, and they're ahead now that level, but not by too much. Is this a big lead for them? Able to go for the siege camp at least?
It's about a level, but the problem right now is that the PLEYZ, they got to kind of lay low a little bit until they can match that level, because level 10 are the heroic talents coming in, and when you have an extra button to hit and your opponents don't, you are really at a big advantage, and the PLEYZ know that. They're just going to lay low a little bit, soak out as much as they can. You see the Zeratul top, you see this now actually aggression bottom. They did just hit their heroics, so they can actually now fight on an even tier. And some of those heroics coming out, everything's looking pretty much standard out of there. We got the heals on the heals, we got Void Prison coming out, Metamorphosis, and Ancestral Healing there to boot.
Yeah, and you know, as you mentioned that, the Metamorphosis and Ancestral Healing, two big heroics that complement each other very well if this scenario pushes itself towards another big fight between the two of these teams, as Illidan's just been cleaning up mostly on the top side, so not really in a position to go for the big fight as he makes his way back towards the team. But Azmodan's also been sitting pretty in the middle lane, just farming up, of course, that globe once again. Are the damage dealers, without the damage dealers, can there be that big of a fight down here?
Well, not really, but Tempo Storm wasn't really exactly looking for that fight. I mean, Illidan being all the way into the top, he pushed down that top fort. Mid was also getting pushed in there with Arthelon. He has those agents of hell just kind of pushing. So even though Tempo Storm might be looking dire here in this bottom lane, they're getting advantages in two others, and more importantly, they're not dropping any takedowns yet.
Yeah, it's pretty tricky, as the first stun actually does come in with that water elemental flying up, but there's the Metamorphosis now jumping in and trying to get some of this damage done, as Azmodan does join the battle, coming back once again. There's the globe hitting most of the team, and we start to see those big heals coming out now, and it's basically just big trade after big trade.
Yeah, but Jaina in the back, she just cannot sustain this kind of level of damage, and Arthelon again with that big globe of annihilation. It will actually lead us into the triple takedown, as Zuna is looking to solidify the last one here on top of LexUther. There's no escapes ready for that Malfurion, and the only survivor will be Daihuu, who is just kind of really far back into his own base. And level 13 to 11, again, those talent tier advantages. 13 is another big granting right there, and going into that with more buttons or more power, it really is those advantages, and that many kills, they got the bottom lasers going, as well as this boss.
And that Azmodan being able to just step into the battle and knock him down, being on his own for so long in the middle, just getting stacks on stacks.
Stacks on stacks. I mean, he's now already hitting 216 at the 9-minute mark. He's not quite on par for a world record. I very much suspect
it's good enough.
It's going to stay on Tomb of the Spider Queen, but coming into this 200 extra damage every 10 seconds on that Jaina, on the Zeratul. If Malfurion's already used to have that Tranquility, that is just almost just irrevocable damage, and that has led us into now 6 takedowns to 1 for Tempo Storm.
Yeah, and Tempo Storm holds now, as well as not only the takedown lead, the level lead, but also the fort lead. If they get into a position where they have to fall back for just a little bit, at the very least, they'll have a little bit more defenses to hold back those creep waves as they can push out and take mercenary camps.
And again, like that big team fight as well, it led us into the control of both of the towers. Those obelisks are just doing immense amounts of work. Those siege damage is really starting to stack up. The gate is already down. We got bruisers pushing into the top, and that is really keeping the PLEYZ occupied in that top lane. But wow, 900 damage already on those globes. You can see the wave clear potential of Arthelon, as well as the push potential with those global promotes, because those agents keep just jumping up and up up and up.
Yeah, you don't need to spread your team out to actually get the experience from those lanes anymore, because Azmodan just clear it with a single globe almost. And at this point, they're just clearing up camps, taking the rest of the siege camps. I mean, honestly, what do the PLEYZ do now?
Well, the PLEYZ are pretty much stuck on defense, and you know the best defense is a great offense, so this is great for Tempo Storm, but this is kind of the pits right now for the PLEYZ because they're stuck on their side of the map. They have a lot of infrastructure now missing on this map, but so they basically just got to bide their time. They did just hit 13, so they do have those talents ready to go, but the problem is that Tempo is 3 levels ahead of them at 16, and that is the big money shot right there, because not only...
You go from 2 talents down back to just 1 down, and say, well, I'm still not really happy with that.
Well, 3 more levels if we keep at this pace. I mean, we'll be tied up for 1, and then, of course, the Storm talents will kick in. But the big thing here is because we have double warriors for PLEYZ, level 16 has lent us 2 Blood for Bloods, not only on Azmodan, but the Rhaegar as well, and that's percentage damage. Those warriors cannot actually sustain against this level of damage, plus 15% more of their hit points gone at a single button.
Yeah, the ability to burst down these guys in a big fight, especially when you consider that they do have the Azmodan, who will also have that burst AoE, is a really big thing to be concerned about, and they're getting ready to push once again towards center position, even chunking the globe there. There's the Void Prison holding down half the team as they try to dive in on top of the Azmodan. They will be able to knock him down, so making the best of the situation that they can, and there's the Metamorphosis trying to make something else of it.
Yeah, the Void Prism is absolutely immaculate right there, and the 5-man surround, taking down the Lord of Sin is just a really good step here from the PLEYZ, but can they actually do this? Still down their talent tiers. You see now Zeus, he's going to actually have to get off to the side, and Drin, he doesn't have the survivability to deal with this Illidan, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of big lockdown. And there goes the tier there as well. Lots of takedowns, even with that man advantage. The PLEYZ cannot make up this level difference, and there's no control for that Illidan.
Yeah, you can really see the benefits of the advantage that they've built up throughout the course of this game. Now even taking those temples once again, absolutely incapable of contesting them and just knocking down the rest of the fortifications for the PLEYZ. I mean, at this point, are they just waiting now to get everybody after they've respawned up together and go for one more push? Or is it maybe still better for them to draw it out, get to level 20, and try to finish this game with their Storm Talents?
Well, Tempo Storm is just going to be looking to finish as quick as they can, but unfortunately the PLEYZ, they don't really have the luxury of kind of waiting around. They are going to be putting up this big damage into the bottom, the big showing, but unfortunately, again, they just lost out their Malfurion in that push. Zeus is there, but it's just not nearly enough. Not only are they down team members, and well, there goes the Zeratul as well, but they're down in those levels, and with 2 temples of the dunk on Jaina, she just ragdolls out of that one.
She went flying.
I mean, you can see, we got creeps pushing into the top, we got those mercenaries, there goes the second keep, and now this laser is going to be working on the third. This is now a naked core. This is the end game scenario for Tempo Storm.
Not a fun place to be when that temple is able to hit your core, now working away on those shields without even having to have any of their heroes there to attack it yet.
Yep, it's a scary thought because this temple push might not be the end of it, but again, it might be. That General Hell just kind of leading a really fat creep wave, and 92% and counting. Everyone was in position for Tempo Storm, but at the same time, there's no need to rush. There's $5,000 on the line after all. Next temple spawn is going to be between 2 and 3 temples, and all you really need at 84% is 1 to seal the deal.
Yeah, it's a painful position to be in, and then of course the clock is ticking towards that level 20. Once we get those Storm Talents, that's pretty much the deal sealer in this scenario, would you say?
Yep, yeah, and that's going to be coming up very quickly. So once again, they're painting the map red. They're picking up every single camp, bruisers, bosses, siege giants. They're going to be marching down. They're keeping the PLEYZ busy. And the PLEYZ, they're happy to take the experience. You can see they're now 16, and they're finally on that even talent tier. So if you go for 3, you will still be on those tiers, but level 20 is now on the horizon. And if this Grave Golem starts marching to the Tempo Storm tune, this could be GG.
Yeah, I mean, with the power of that mixed in, they can't get any creep waves pushing because Azmodan continues to chuck those globes with precise aim. And I have to agree with you, getting this boss is key for them to at least be able to seal the deal. As they go for another fight, they're trying to deny it as much as they can. Void Prison on the Water Elemental, locking down half the team, but there's just so much firepower here. Zeratul immediately picked off following Jaina. Those squishier heroes cannot stand a chance.
And the body blocks are just absolutely real in that small little choke point, because 3 now takedowns round's about to be 4. Illidan is just having a field day. Zuna has got to be feeling really good for this game number 1 performance. But as I said, all you need is that 1 tempo. Looks like it's only going to be the top one. We're still that early into this draft, but we don't even need the Grave Golem at this point. When there's no one left to stop it, you go for the kill, and it does look like game 1 will be going to Tempo Storm here in this first of the best of 3.
Yeah, Core is knocked down as the whole team for the PLEYZ is, well, out of commission. A victory in game number 1 for Tempo Storm, one of the favorited teams competing here in the North America June Open. A pretty solid straight-up game by Tempo Storm.
Well, I mean, if you've got to put down a wager, I got to say, Tempo Storm's looking good, Kubi.
Yes, I can't argue. They got that level lead very, very early on in the match, and they just showed their dominance all throughout that whole game.
Yeah, I really impressed the results. You guys can see they're now up 1-0. This is the last upper bracket match, so a victory in game number 2 will put them into a much more comfortable position, and a defeat here for the PLEYZ would put them on the brink of elimination. Intense match. Biggest thing we could say that maybe the PLEYZ could have changed or tried to do to compensate in that early game.
A lot of it really has to do with dealing with Illidan, and we saw some opportunities where they were trying to make use of the Void Prison to try to lock out a few members of the enemy team, but they just found themselves, when it came to the Heroics talent tier, they just didn't have the even talent tier footing, especially in the levels. And even if you're able to lock out a few members, there were a couple times where we saw they were fighting 4v5, and they still weren't able to really bring it back to something that was more manageable of a team fight. So they needed to establish a better early game, in my opinion. I
gotta say, even with that 4v5, I mean, the level differences really did show right there. They were able to take down the Asmodan, so they didn't have to worry about those orbs of annihilation. I mean, they did stack actually past about 300 by the end of it all, but at the same time, even down a man, the solid gameplay of Tempo Storm just absolutely annihilated the PLEYZ, and fortunately, there wasn't really too many big comeback opportunities past that. Tempo Storm just knows how to close out a game.
Yeah, they seemed to pick up a lot of momentum when they had that big fight towards the south position where they were able to take the temple as Asmodan came back and basically chucked that globe to catch them all trying to escape. It was a really nice setup, and as you said, even losing Asmodan at the beginning of one of the previous fights because the Void Prison locked out half the team, they built up too much of an advantage to actually be able to lose.
Yeah.
Very good points. Well, hopefully I have that exact replay for you guys. You were mentioning that very moment in the bottom lane. So hopefully we can pull that up for you guys. There it is right here. So I want to call attention, of course, to Illidan's position and where he's going to be in the fight, but also Johanna as well. She's going to be looking to move down into the enemy team, use that condemn to try to pull so many of the members together. And then we're going to see Illidan moving in here. He's going to cast a Metamorphosis. It's going to hit so many of the members of the PLEYZ, of course. And you talked about Asmodan trying to get into the fight. We will see him sort of sneaking in up here, and we're going to see a huge globe of annihilation here, and it's just going to start the chase that ultimately ends with many members of the PLEYZ falling forward. So we're going to go ahead and advance that replay. We see the Illidan rotating around. There is the Condemn and the Metamorphosis to follow up shortly after. There it is, hitting all 5 members of the PLEYZ. And of course, we see the Void Prison, not a bad attempt to try to make it a control of this fight, but then we just see the Asmodan running in from the top lane. There he is, hitting the globe, and this is really what is going to carry Tempo Storm to have that huge lead that they have throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic play by Tempo Storm to secure that 1-0 advantage with some great play. And of course, you guys can try to make those sweet globe dunks yourselves. You can try out Heroes of the Storm. It's free to play. Sign up today. Just go to heroesofthestorm.com and try it out for yourself. We'll be back after a short commercial break with game number 2 between Tempo Storm and the PLEYZ.
Warcraft, Warlords of Draenor, rated teen.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Heroes of the Storm North America June Open. We just saw a victory in game number 1 between Tempo Storm and the PLEYZ. Of course, that first map win going to Tempo Storm. Very strong showing to kick things off.
Absolutely, and we saw a very, very dominant Illidan play, and we haven't seen all that much Illidan play today, oftentimes banned out or just sort of forced out based on the rest of the compositions, and I think that was a pretty good example of why that is the case.
Yeah, there's a really big reason that Heroes of the Storm had the Illidan in almost every single match in their top games earlier on in this year. And, coming into this, it's not really too much of a surprise. These top teams, they know how to use every single hero in the game, and it's not a surprise to see them dominate with Illidan.
Yeah, really great utilization of those heroes and the combinations that you can pull off with them, of course. And these teams are not only good themselves, but some of their players are really awesome as well. We do have a little bit of information to look at some of these guys. Daihuu, of course, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania boy like me. I don't know if I can match those beatbox skills, but seems like a pretty cool guy.
He's also an avid pen collector, 150 of them. That's a very interesting thing to collect, but hey, each to their own. I like that style. You just make sure you get that type of hobby going, along with, of course, really excellent Heroes of the Storm play.
I got to give him props for Chen as the most picked hero. You do not see a lot of Chen play in North America.
I was going to say, we haven't really seen much Chen at all today.
Nope.
And of course, we can also take a look at a player from the other team, Dreadnaught, as you guys are doing quite a bit of talking about this guy, likes that Rhaegar, and is from Arizona.
Yeah, and a little bit of a contestant, I think, to me. I think he intentionally put this point there. Became a professional juggler and joined the World Juggling Federation before the age of 18. I have actually a scheduled juggle off with him later this year, would you believe?
Wow.
The World Juggling Federation is the thing. Today I learned. That's pretty hardcore.
Hey, man, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of dexterity. It goes great with wrists. It goes great into video games because, these are our tools of destruction. You got to take good care of them, man.
You got to be able to focus on a lot of chaos happening at once, I suppose. The skills do translate to an extent.
Absolutely.
For game number 2, we're going to be playing on Haunted Mines.
Oh, man.
This is one of the first times we're seeing this today, isn't it?
It is, and we're going to take a quick look at it here. So the battleground overview for Haunted Mines, it's a 2-lane map. We've been doing predominantly 3. This one's a little bit smaller. It's not the biggest, not the smallest, but it does only have those 2 lanes. There's only also 3 mercenary camps because it's not that big. You can't really fit that many into them. And here's the big unique mechanic. We actually have a split level. You venture underground, you collect skulls, and this is what powers what we're going to call the Golem. And he just pops right out of that ground, as angry as anything, and he's just going to be pushing down that lane, looking to take the core there from your opponents. And another big thing about this is that both sides get Golems. Even if you go 100-0 in the exchanges, both sides are rewarded Golems. It's just, of course, the one with 100 is much more bigger and fiercer.
That's a very, very good point to make. And of course, like you guys mentioned, this is a map that we have not yet seen today. And honestly, it's not something we see very often in competitive play. Oftentimes it's banned out, striked out by the teams before they even get into the series. So we're very likely going to see a very, very different style strategy. But before we get into that, I think we have a little bit of a highlight for Tempo Storm.
BlizzCon really matters because that was our starting goal, actually, when we started as Symbiote Gaming, was we're going to go to BlizzCon and we're going to win it.
Me, Dread, and Arth really hit it off and started playing a ton. And that was kind of like the birth of Symbiote.
We're definitely a group of like 5 friends rather than just like 5 teammates.
So we stuck around as a team and competed for about 7 months, did extremely well. Shortly after BlizzCon, we were approached by Tempo Storm and we got picked up by that organization, and we've been Tempo Storm ever since.
Signing with Tempo Storm, that kind of changed our lives a lot.
I would say the biggest strength is that we have really good synergy. The mentality is pretty much like we know that we can beat every other team. We've already done it.
We know where everyone is at all times, and we do everything as a team.
As long as we just play solid, play smart, then we win.
It's weird because everybody has different sleep schedules. Now we all recently actually just signed up at the gym, so now the gym after practice is a consistent thing as well that we're trying to get into.
Nerds tend to be pretty messy and lazy, so that's, sometimes an issue and everything, but overall, it's very cool just constantly being able to talk to people that, you relate to and are doing the same things you are.
But overall, it's just trying to learn how to human properly, I think is what the basis of it all is. and have a good time.
Very enlightening video to see about Tempo Storm. If we're ever hanging out, let's go to the gym. Sounds like a good time.
I like the sound of that. Of course, it's not just about playing the game, as they highlight. You also need to make sure that you guys are working as a group for everything. I like that. Going to the gym, that's great. Always a proponent of that.
The big thing here, though, is that they're having fun. And they said that repeatedly. You get together, you hang out, you have fun. It's not a game of Heroes of the Storm unless you're having fun.
Yeah, it's easy to overstress yourself when you're preparing for competitions. You always have to remember the reason that we play games is because we enjoy doing so. With that being said, we're just about ready to go into the draft for map number 2 on Haunted Mines to see, well, honestly, what are the good picks on this map, guys?
First of all, it's got to be a Sylvanas band. There it is. Boom. Like, it's just a hero that is way too strong on this map because, of course, you rely so much on the Golem to take damage from the structures. And if you have Sylvanas using her trait, the Black Arrows, to cancel that out, just way too strong of an ability, so no surprise to see that hero banned out.
Number 1, yeah, you got to get rid of those Black Arrows. So Zeratul is actually going to be here on the chop block as well. The PLEYZ, they know that Tempo Storm, they got some melee under their belt, but this also now lead us again into Illidan's, lead us into Kerrigan's, small maps. It's all about initiation. It's all about conflict on this one, because if you can get a positional advantage, you take down a few of those opponents, you could actually just have a great clean wipe of a lot of those skulls.
Yeah, I'm interested to see as we start to get the first picks. You mentioned Illidan with only 2 lanes and a decent amount of length of sight blockers. Getting jumped is definitely something to be worried about.
Absolutely.
For sure. So we're going to be waiting on those next 2 plays from the PLEYZ. Okay. And it is going to be the Evandrinde taking that away from Illidan. But still, you guys got to mention it. Of course, Illidan was such a strong part of the last fight, and they were not able to take that away. So PLEYZ is going to have to look to construct their team elsewhere to make something strong to deal with Illidan. We're going to see the Jaina and the Evandrinde.
Now, if I had to take any kind of situation out of this, Haunted Mines can actually lead itself into some really interesting team comps. Because it's such a small map and it's very rinse-repeat, sometimes we're actually only going to see 1 warrior, 1 support, and then like triple specialist, triple assassin, a mix thereof. And the synergy might not be very apparent. Already you see Tassadar Brightwing, but it really does come out well. And again, we talk about these 2 a lot, and that's because of that promoting.
Yeah, I was gonna say on a battleground that only has 2 lanes, you have a limited amount of lanes to be pushing. How much does that promote really play into it?
Well, you'd be surprised, especially considering when there is the call to attention to move people into the bottom side of the map. If you can promote before that happens, you're guaranteeing yourself a good amount of time to get extra push. But we are moving into that second ban phase, and the PLEYZ were looking to take out a new Barak.
That's not a bad way to go. And there goes the Kerrigan as well. We don't want to put a symbiote on top of Kerrigan, and at the same time, you'd also now have 2 picks here from the PLEYZ. So a Kerrigan and Uther, a Zeratul and Uther. I mean, those were really big targeted bans there.
Yeah, and we see them now going for Johanna, so they'll have a little bit of that crowd control now, and going for Uther as well to round out with that support, that healing ability.
And thus far, Kaeyoh has not been picked up. Which is a considerable surprise thus far, considering how strong of a mage he is. We'll have to see if Tempo Storm looks to grab him ETC.
Interesting.
Okay, let's take a look at ETC's abilities. We can talk about why he's such an interesting pick. Of course, he does a lot of crowd control with his power slide and face melt. You'll see him dash through opponents and use that face melt to knock them away, perhaps into the rest of your team. Guitar Soul is just a really nice aura that he can put out, but more importantly, he has the mosh pit and the stage dive. Probably not going to see the stage dive this game because of how small the map it is, but it could happen. Mosh Pit, though, is a channeled ability that can stun out enemy members of the team, and it can really, really turn fights around, so look to see that ability.
So if you combo a really good Mosh Pit, you capture 2, 3, 4 of the opponents with them. The double warrior apparently being super popular today. That's a great setup for the Illidan Metamorphosis, because you're going to get so many more hit points for every hero hit. But the Tyrael on this as well. This is Engage Central.
This really, really is. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this composition. But it is Haunted Mines, which really does a lot to change the meta, especially how this map is played out.
So Zed, you could have some really interesting comps.
Yeah, and the final pick, Arthas.
Really interesting comps.
For the PLEYZ. I mean, all these unusual or maybe not as common picks that we're seeing on a battleground where you're fighting over a lot of objectives. There's a lot of small spaces. Perhaps this is the way to go on this map. What do you guys think?
Well, this is our second Arthas, isn't it, Kubi?
Yes, it is. I'm trying to remember. It was two matches ago.
Cloud9
yes,
Fan.
it was. It was on Vortex that they ran Arthas as well. Not to, unfortunately, their success. But still, we saw some moments of brilliance in there. So maybe we'll see something to that effect from the PLEYZ.
All right, so Haunted Mines. We have a very interesting draft. And are we ready to go, Nathaniel?
It seems we are just about ready to kick off game number 2 between the PLEYZ and Tempo Storm. Very excited to see how this one's going to play out. Being able to see this map for the first time today, and we do have Tempo Storm starting up on the right side of the map. This would be a very interesting one, of course, featuring ETC, Tyrael, Illidan, Brightwing, and Tassadar.
So, we talk a lot about the Tassadar Brightwing. We're going to get to that, but, on the left-hand side, these guys, they're looking for their tournament upper bracket life right here. Daihuu and crew, Evandrinde, PyratRum, LexUther to boot. They're going to be looking for this win, and I'm not entirely too sure. Arthas, so far, he has not won a match, but coming into this, there's a lot of melee on the side of Tempo Storm, because on the right-hand side there, ETC, he's going to be looking to get in there. Tyrael with the Judgment, he's going to be diving in. Metamorphosis from that Illidan. The big last pick of the Arthas might be looking to just do that big area control that he is really known for.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, when you consider how many melee heroes we have on the battleground for Tempo Storm, how useful does that make Johannes Condemn pulling people together? I mean, they get close to you, that makes them a little scarier, no?
Yeah, you bring him in close, and then we could have a Howling Blast. You got the Raging Tempest there as well with the AoE from Arthas. And the bigger thing about that is that because they have to dive in, they don't have any escapes, and all that stacking amount of slow is not going to be getting them out of the dodge anytime soon. But already, there it is, the Howling Blast. That nearly takes down Arthelon there early for that first blood, but it just wasn't enough quite yet.
Yeah, definitely have to be careful, because that's also going to play very well into Jaina's slowing effects that will, if you get caught and you're a melee hero, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, if you guys know anything about, Warcraft Frost Mages, the kings and queens of crowd control, and you got not only the Lich King, but the Archmage of Dalaran there with that Jaina. That's a lot of ice damage. Of course, stuns and condemns. There's a lot of control here from the play. So they're looking to just methodically control these fights and push up. And, the fights are going to be very important, because if you can get a man advantage right when these mines open, which will be coming up in just 10 seconds, that is a big positional advantage.
Now that's where things get really tricky. You not only fighting, of course, for the experience in the lanes, but you need to get mind control. And that, of course, makes your Grave Golem so much more powerful when they spawn. So when you look at a map like this and the way that these teams are laid out, how do they approach going for it? Just stay away from each other in the mines, or I guess fight?
Well, pretty much, you will choose different entrances, but it's always a rush to the left-hand side. It's where the most skulls are, and this is actually really looking good for Tempo Storm. Arthelon might be low, but he got in with those body blocks. There's nowhere for Arthas to go. Daihuu will be the first blood, and he will drop as the first takedown, but we've seen this before. Zuna on that Illidan, he gets into there. Even Dread on Johanna got off a great condemn at the end, but there's no follow-up, and that man advantage is going to go the way of Tempo Storm. A lot of time, these big fights in these mines can decide who gets these skulls. Fortunately, we're still really early in this game, so those timers to come back into the game, they haven't really accrued to those really big countdowns, so they're going to be able to come right back into this mine.
Yeah, it's not an unreasonable advantage that they gained from those picks at the start of this mine run, as it were. Get a small advantage now as they're able to get straight away to all those left side skulls that you had mentioned. They do come in, they try to get that pick, just barely escaping the mine at the last second. Tyrael running for his life, and he's going to make it.
He is. Yeah, there just was not enough range damage by the end of it as well. Remember, there's 3 melee plus an Abathur. All right, I don't already know what you want to classify that.
It's a sticky situation.
They can't really chase it. It was really only the Jaina that could actually have finished it off, and she was down in the mines. But look at the skull count there, Nathaniel. 61-15. So the respawns were good. Plays, they go down, they contest. They didn't quite get a takedown to their name, but they will be able to clean up the rest of these skulls, and that is actually exactly what Tempo Storm is okay with, because look at their push here in the bottom.
Yeah, they've been able to make a lot happen and taking out some of the forts, or at least working on them in the southern position, and their golem is still going to be very strong. And now coming in, they've actually jumped them coming out of the mines.
Yeah, perfect play coming out of Tempo Storm. They predicted that, they found it. 1 and 2, they're looking for that. There it is. It's actually going to be the trade-up, but the PLEYZ, believe it or not, they took the upper hand in this one, because everybody came down on top of Daihuu, on top of that Johanna. They were able to keep them close and consistent, and Arthas really racked up a heck of a lot of damage that fight.
Yeah, you would think being able to catch them all coming out of the mines would help, but since you're so close, you have all those area of effect slowing abilities coming out of Jaina and Arthas that can give you those big advantages in the fights up close.
So that was a really good move there from the PLEYZ. If you look at the experience, we're basically at parity. Now, there is a big difference in these golems that are still now marching down these lanes. And this is also, again, very smart. Tempo Storm are going to get those siege giants, and that will actually help on the defensive maneuvers of the incoming blue golem. You see the big, scary one here, red. 61 skulls power in this, whereas it's only 39 into this top. There's a big visual difference, isn't there?
He doesn't look quite as fearsome as his buddy in the south position, for sure. And he can still do a good bit of work on this northern fort, but with the whole entire team of Tempo Storm focusing him down, it's not going to be a catastrophic amount of damage inflicted.
So big defensive maneuvers there from Tempo Storm. We also can have big defensive maneuvers coming out here from the PLEYZ, because, well, they don't really have too much of a choice at this point. There's no Sylvanas on the map, and level 7 hits out, and Tempo Storm once again is going to put a mule on the board.
Dropping the mules, man. Gotta keep everything
Those busy
running.
little worker bees.
Nice and tight. As a Terran player, I can tell you, I love them.
So the defensive tactics are now done. Level 7 coming up from each side. Not exactly, game-ending scenarios yet, but look at Daihuu. He's going to try to contest this point. He's going to sit right there. The Condemn is good as well. So much area of effect control being afforded here by Daihuu. That's going to be it for Tyrio. He's actually going to drop. He will explode and take down the Jaina with him into those timers. And now Daihuu, he's kind of spent a little bit too much time behind enemy lines, and he will be the cleanup. So did they actually lose out that camp? They did. The PLEYZ, they were successful in taking the camp, but they did lose out the fight.
Yeah, I mean, once you've taken out the Arthas and the Jaina and most of the slows are removed, you have a lot more freedom to chase down any of the other remaining heroes, and makes it a little bit easier to get those warriors, those melee classes, up close and personal.
Now, we actually do have a mule on the other side here with the Abathur, Zeus playing it for the PLEYZ. So both sides do have these mules, and between golems and between a lot of these big creep waves and the big pushes with the mercenaries, you're going to see a lot of mules coming down pretty much on time. You're just trying to repair. If we can actually bring our forts back to full health when these golems spawn up again, it's going to delay their march to the enemy core.
Yeah, and the more that you can delay that, considering that there are only 2 lanes, those pushes are just that much more valuable since the mine hasn't come into play yet, but we already have that Condemn pulling everybody nice and close together, getting even the roots now on top of them, and kind of forcing the PLEYZ to retreat here back towards their forts.
Oh man, that double warrior comp is doing so much work. Daihuu cannot get around them. Now they will actually trade out the warriors by the end of it, but you can see the big strategy with that ETC, with that Tyrio. They go in and they cut off the blocks with those bigger, beefier warrior models. They are actually bigger models, and you cannot get around them, especially if you have no escapes. Jaina, no escape. Joanna, no escape. Arthas, and they could continuously do this again and again. So many takedowns now already on the board. 6-4 in 7 minutes, but the next set of mine is up.
Yeah, those takedowns are slowly becoming much more valuable in terms of the time cost for coming into the mines and starting to grab a couple of these skulls. And the teams are split up, so we shouldn't be seeing so quickly an advantage taken by Tempo Storm, but it looks like they could force an engagement before they get to work on the actual Grave Golem here in the mines.
Now, I'm not entirely too sure Tempo Storm is going to contest that, at least not yet. They might just back off a little bit. That's the reason why. They just hit level 10. We have heroics. If they show themselves down here, the PLEYZ is sure to try to run away. And Tyrio into the back, he's actually cutting them off. If he judgments out, he's going to throw in with Eldrone. He's looking for a judgment target into the back. Here comes the stage dive as well. That will provide the vision. There's the judgment, but the cleanse is going to be keeping PyratRum alive. Their Tempo Storm gets defeated with the combo, but they're not done yet. Arthelon will still chase. He goes right through those mines looking for that takedown, and I guess they're just going to have to settle here for LexUther. But you see the synergy now coming back.
Yeah.
They continually dive. They try to cut off those escapes. They create the Illidan sandwich with that metamorphosis, and now with that level 10, that was just a great opportunity for Tempo Storm to put up about a 70 skull golem.
Yeah, you really don't want to take a fight against a team that can go for that metamorphosis Illidan. On top of the Archon, Tassadar is just going to wreck your face straight up, so able to take that advantage once again. And at this point, with this many skulls for the Golem, they've not only built a nice one of theirs, but they've actually denied a few of the skulls that they had. It's an even weaker Golem than they had prior.
There's that mule right there. MVP from both sides, just doing his dutiful duty, keeping up those structures. Now this TPZ looked like they're actually really ramping to push. They got the weaker Golem, but if they do push with it, they're going to be putting themselves into position, because if this push does not work for them, and they're the ones to pay the price, that 74 skull Golem in the bottom lane is really going to take its toll.
That was the biggest concern here. If they're not able to really make something happen and keep Tempo Storm on their side of the field defending against this full-on assault, then that Golem is going to just pay itself off, and massive crowd control being thrown on this team.
The stage dive, the metamorphosis, Soldier is just looking absolutely wonderful. In the back of that, you see PyratRum, he's on the front lines. That's never where you want the Jaina to be, and that is just going to be continua on. Arthas is now going to drop. There's no big mobility escapes here for the PLEYZ, and look at Zuna, he's just going to jump in, and he's going to jump on top of that LexUther. Again,
Uther's
no
running
escapes.
for his life, but there's nowhere to go.
And now with that Ghost Swarm, there's no one to heal, and this is exactly what I was afraid of. If we didn't have the best of engages here from the PLEYZ, they're now down 3 of their team members, and this little golem here, it's not going to be the golem that could. This gigantic, massive 74 skull golem down here is going to start doing work.
Yeah, this beast is going to get to work, and he's got the backup there. You know, Zuna right behind him with Soldier, and you know this is just such a tough spot.
No, he didn't. Never mind.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
he got hit by Daihuu. Daihuu rooted him, and that
okay.
was actually a fantastic pickup there from the PLEYZ.
Yeah, nice to at least slow this down a little bit. They still have to deal with the Golem, as Tempo Storm's been trying to support it as much as they can. Don't want to take too much more fights without Illidan, but you know, for the most part, being up now, at least this one talent for a short time will allow them to take this Merc camp in the center, and they won't be as concerned about being pushed back.
Yeah, level 13 coming out is actually, again, a little interesting coming out for the Tassadar. Not only have we had Promote and then the Mule, which we've actually seen 2 in a row now from Kaeyoh, but as well, level 13 is Shrink Ray. And Shrink Ray, because we already have so many positional problems with the PLEYZ once they get flanked, Shrink Ray is not really going to help them out whatsoever in this regard. In fact, the Shrink Ray is going to allow even better positioning for Tempo Storm to cut off those escapes.
Yeah, at this point, anything that's going to slow you down or keep you out of position is a really important tool, considering just how much both these teams are relying on their area of effect spells and their ability to slow and crowd control.
Yeah, it's just so, I mean, but between the levels, 13 to 12 might not really look that bad, but as you say, a lot of area control has really come into this match, but 12 to 13 is kind of devastating for the PLEYZ because they're on the defensive, they can't push out, they do not have those Xel'Naga watchtowers, they don't have the map presence, and if they move into any of these areas with bushes, and it's going to be a surprise party bush, and you know, all of Tempo Storm is just kind of camping out, waiting for it, you could actually put yourself in a really bad spot.
That's not the surprise party you want to walk in, and already diving in on top of this, Arth is completely getting isolated from his team, and there we see just trying to get the defensive abilities thrown in on him, but at the same time, all of Tempo Storm is here with, you know, Jaina only just now managing to get back up towards the team.
Yeah, you saw the judgment after that. The Shrink Ray went off Daihuu. This actually might be a little bit of an overextension from Tempo Storm. They really tried to take down that Arthas, and they couldn't. But in the back, Uther is actually going to be the one to go down. He does have the Flash of Light still ready to go, but both warriors are down for Tempo Storm. Zuna, without those dive buddies, he will not be able to really continue on into that, except perhaps, well, now PyratRum's actually jumping in. Immediately, Zuna goes for it, but it will be the kill on top of Brightwing, and they are still looking to either take down Daihuu or PyratRum on the left. Zuna and Kaeyoh, unfortunately, they just could not continue, and they will go into the mines because in 10 seconds we have the next wave, and we're down 2 teammates here for Tempo Storm.
I like the way that you phrased it. They really overextended their position. They ran right in, and during the entirety of that fight, the Keep was just wailing away at them, had full ammunition to keep going, and all that extra damage really gives a nice boost to your defensive capabilities at the very least, while simultaneously Jaina showing up just in time to drop that water elemental right in the center of the whole Tempo Storm team.
So with those extra talents, and now level 14 each side, the PLEYZ, they're coming back into this one pretty strong here into this mid game. But again, Tempo Storm always one step ahead. They didn't win out the team fight, but they went immediately into the mines. Already 46 skulls to their name. They were down there and ready as soon as they spawned, and they knew that the PLEYZ couldn't follow them because they didn't have those hit points. They were waiting for some of those teammates to respawn, and you know, the PLEYZ, they're basically just kind of forced to immediately go for the big guy. This could be a big contesting point because we have ETC with the stage dive ready to go, and everyone else is here, and there it is.
Yeah, he's going to jump right in now. We have Tyrael coming in as well on top of the right side. Jaina getting shielded now, trying to continue to drop these spells. That Great Golem still whacking away throughout all of this at the same time.
Oh man, I mean, Zuna is just sticking to PyratRum like glue. There are so many spells just to try to keep that Jaina alive, but the metamorphosis by the end of it, you saw the Shrink Rays go down back and forth as well. LexUther, the wrong side of the line of scrimmage. There goes the ETC though, so they have traded out 1 for 1. We did have a clone out from the Illidan as well, but Johanna is actually going to get chased down by Zuna into the bottom, and now the rest of the PLEYZ is going to be on the retreat. Daihuu has nothing left in the tank. No hit points, no mana, and now no presence on that map. And Uther, he's going to be the lone survivor, well, for about another second, and he is going to drop his soldier, and Kaeyoh are just going to chase him out of those mines. Once more, a big golem coming the way because of the early skull advantage, and they're presence between Stage Dive and Brightwing's phase shift just allowed that team fight to work so very well for Tempo Storm.
Yeah, the difference in overall skull count wasn't quite as crazy, but the fact that they were able to get so many skulls despite only going into the mines with 2 of their heroes is still something, you know, to be given note towards, I think.
All right, Judgment's going to come out again, another Stage Dive. That's how long that previous fight was. These are off cooldown, and they're going for the Jaina. There's no protection, and she cannot escape the wrath of that double warrior comp, and this is, again, great timing for Tempo Storm. 58 Skull Golem just shows up here at this keep, and we're down a defender. Tempo's going to be looking to take the keep, if not the game on this.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, they tried to make some use of this, the healing fountain right before it was knocked down, but the keep won't be lasting too much longer without Jaina, without all of the slows that can come into that water elemental. It's very difficult to stop a team like this that's going to get so up close and personal and in your face.
Yeah, that golem is looking really healthy, Nathanius, and even with the double Arthas, they tried to bring more slows back with the double Arthas for that mage damage, for that frozen damage, but it just doesn't seem to be enough. Dread and crew are still putting the irons to this team, and the PLEYZ are looking on the verge of actually dropping out of this series 2-0. Zeus is actually way too far forward as well. He has to just kind of scuttle back into the fountain, and again, this core is going down.
Yeah, and Arthas gets stuck in the middle of all of it, body blocked by absolutely everybody as they focus down that core, and that's going to be the big target now, dropping below 50%, and with a lot of health remaining on most of the heroes that are still here, and not a lot to stop them. It looks like they should be able to pick it off. There's the first GGs coming out now of the PLEYZ, and Tempo Storm looking to take that 2-0 here.
Fantastic gameplay out of them. They had those level advantages for majority of those fights, and at the same time, I mean,